Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Naruto found himself walking down a long barren street, statues of humans everywhere he could see. The sky was red with dark black clouds hanging over him, buildings were torn into tatters, the bay was filled with lava, and as if the place couldn't be any more horrific, the sun he suppose, was as red as blood. Looking down at himself, Naruto saw he was dressed in his red X gear, his tattered trench coat included, with his swords on his back, and a pair of bladed gauntlets over his forearms and hands. Reaching up, Naruto found half of his skull-like mask had been broken off and grit his teeth in annoyance. What the hell is going on? He wondered to himself before swiftly turning at a sound. Narrowing his eyes, the blonde-haired X-nin quickly turned, and then found his eyes slowly widening, as he saw a shadowed figure walk towards him. Slade. Naruto whispered as the man approached, his arms folded behind his back as his single cold grey eyes glared at the blonde ominously. The two stood in the middle of the hellish wasteland, silently appraising one another and glaring into one another's eyes darkly. So we meet again. Slade coldly remarked while Naruto narrowed his eyes onto the armored man dangerously. What do you want, Slade? Naruto demanded, and Slade chuckled lightly while looking at the blonde-haired boy. What do I want? An apprentice worthy of my teachings and heir to take my vast resources and power when I'm gone. The destruction of Jump City and its titans. Quite a few things actually, but all of them are irrelevant for the moment. Slade replied while casually strolling forward, and Naruto slipped back into his stance. Come now, if I was really here to fight I would have engaged you by now. Slade reminded while walking past the blonde, and Naruto turned around, finding Slade with his back turned as he looked up to the red sun. What is going on? Naruto demanded through gritted teeth, and Slade chuckled lightly while lightning flashed in the sky. Why, that should be obvious even to someone with as short an attention span as you. Slade coldly remarked before turning, Naruto's eyes whitening as Slade's mask fell to the ground. Now what was revealed to the blonde was very clearly not Slade's face. Instead, what was revealed was a skull, the right eye missing from its socket with a long gash carved out of the bone, which also had small cracks here and there, while a glowing red eye loomed ominously from the darkness of his left eye socket. The end has come. Slade uttered darkly, his lower jawbone moving even without any muscles to aid it. Taking several steps back from the creature, Naruto turned when he heard a chuckle and saw four eyes floating above him. But just as he saw the eyes, darkness suddenly consumed Naruto's vision. Tartarus HQ. Naruto suddenly shot up in his bed with wide eyes, before placing a hand to his head, and let out several shuddering breaths. Just another nightmare, but damn, that was one seriously messed up nightmare. Naruto mumbled to himself before rolling out of bed, wondering why those nightmares only seemed to stay away when he slept with Raven. Shaking his head of any possibilities, Naruto pushed himself to his feet and walked over to his closet to get his clothes for the day. Laying those out, Naruto then went about his other morning rituals before coming out and getting dressed. He pulled on a pair of black shinobi pants with pockets on the sides today, his usual calf-length black shinobi sandals, a sleeveless black on-boot shirt with the mask rolled over his neck, a red t-shirt. Forearm-length fingerless black gloves with metal plates over the back of his fists and a red band around each wrist, and last was a grey utility belt around his waist and black and red bucket hat. Finished, Naruto then walked out of his room and stretched his arms before yawning lightly. Tiredly making his way down the halls of the HQ and into the ops center, the blonde made his way over to the fridge. Opening it and digging around for a moment, Naruto got some orange juice before grabbing a cup from the cupboard. Pouring himself some orange juice before reaching into the freezer for some frozen pancakes. Getting those ready, Naruto then leaned back as his meal was heated up. Honestly, while he liked a good home-cooked meal as much as the next guy, he liked the sheer convenience of all these frozen foods this world had. Turning away from that, Naruto then looked around the ops center for a moment, instantly noticing that, as per usual, Gizmo wasn't present. We really need to get him out of that lab more often or somehow manage to get him a girlfriend. Naruto thought to himself, then saw Blackfire was leaning back into the sofa, practically sleeping with a peaceful look on her face. Kid Wicked seemed to have made a fort out of the cushions to the sofa. Billy was attacking the said fort in an attempt to retrieve the cushions, or maybe they were playing some kind of childish game, and lastly Seymour and Private Hive were playing a video game. Blinking for a moment, Naruto frowned when he saw neither Jinx, Mammoth, nor Donnie anywhere in sight. Okay, that's unusual. The blonde mumbled before hearing a groan, then turned in time to see Donnie walk into the room. However, Naruto then cursed and quickly moved over to the girl when she nearly fell to the floor. Shit, Donnie, what the hell is wrong with you? Naruto demanded while picking her up, and the girl retched before covering her mouth, her eyes glowing a bright luminescent green even in her human form. Shit, saying there is sicker than a dog. Gizmo replied as he and Mammoth walked into the room, Private Hive and Seymour looking to one another, and then turned off their game, before getting up as well. Only for one of Billy's clones quickly diving for the controller to the game station. Yeah, I noticed, but since when does Donnie even get sick? Naruto demanded of Gizmo since the girl's fairly unique biology practically negated the effects of any known illness. Whatever the hell she has seems to be based on her powers in some way. Gizmo replied and then motioned Naruto to let the girl down, Seymour and Private walking over to him. Is she running a fever? Seymour asked surprisingly seriously, and Gizmo grumbled before looking to Mammoth. Get some water. He ordered and Mammoth walked over to the sink, got a glass and then some water from the sink. What are you? Naruto started to ask before Gizmo held up a hand for him to wait while Mammoth came back. Taking the glass of water from the massive member of Tartarus, Gizmo dipped a finger into it, then let a few drops fall on Donnie's forehead, all of which quickly froze over into a thin sheet of ice. Seconds later however the ice melted and then steamed as Donnie started to sweat on the spot, then seemed to chill over again as she shivered violently. Holy hell. I've heard of hot and cold flashes before, but this is ridiculous. Seymour said with wide eyes while Donnie groaned uncomfortably before his nose suddenly twitched. Hit the decks. Gizmo said and Mammoth pulled Naruto and the others out of the way as the girl sneezed. However, white flames spewed forth from her as she did, the flames arching from her mouth, over the couch, and then slamming into the wall beside of the TV. This finally drew Billy and Kid Wicked's attention as both slowly looked to where the girl was now swaying before falling over with a groan. Okay, that was weird as hell. Naruto mumbled to himself before blinking in surprise, when the girl suddenly gripped her stomach and mouth, got up, and bolted to the side and threw up into the sink, before letting out a few hacking coughs that mingled with disgusted moans. Oh great, now someone's going to have to clean that mess up. Mammoth muttered and got a cold glare from Naruto, while Donnie slid to the floor with a groan. What are the symptoms, Giz? Naruto questioned seriously and Gizmo sighed for a moment before rubbing his scalp. Heat and cold flashes, literally in her case, sporadic bouts of fire-infused sneezes, throwing up a lot of what I'm guessing is ectoplasmic residue that's collected in her lungs and stomach, a hacking cough for the same damn reason. She's also had sporadic transformations, but that actually makes the other symptoms worse, not to mention the physical weakness she displayed all morning that seems to come and go, and odder still are the growth spurts. Gizmo listed off while ticking down fingers, and Naruto blinked at the last bit of info. Growth spurts? Naruto questioned and Gizmo nodded his head with a frown. She's shot up 3 inches in the last 5 hours. Mammoth supplied and Billy whistled for a moment. Well, maybe when this is finally over she'll actually look her age. Billy offered and Donnie suddenly sat up and her eye twitched. What the hell is that supposed to mean, you damn hellbilly bastard? I'm not sure. The girl screamed in rage before suddenly lunging at the Billy that made the comment and started to beat on him too mercilessly. Oh yeah, and the final symptom is the extremely violent and spontaneous mood swings she's been having all day. I nearly got my head ripped off when I said she was a bitch. Gizmo finished with a flat look as Billy cried out for mercy, and Naruto shivered for a moment. So any idea what's going on with her or not, Giz? Naruto questioned while ignoring the Billy that Donnie was currently beating the hell out of, the real Billy and his other clones looking on in shock and fear. Not a damn clue, but as far as I can tell it has something to do with her ghostly biology, rather than an illness. I only said she was sick because she clearly can't go anywhere like this. Gizmo stated while Donnie ranted about not being a small ant-sized pipsqueak that no one could see even with a microscope, and twirled Billy around before throwing him into a wall, his neck snapping with a sickening crack before he faded out of existence, and Donnie blinked before tearing up. Oh no. I killed him, she said to herself, and Naruto slapped his face as she started to bawl loudly, finally waking Blackfire up. What's with all the crying? The dark-haired Tamaranian demanded and then blinked as Donnie lunged at her and cried into her chest. I killed Billy, the gosling girl exclaimed, and Wayla sat down next to a very confused Blackfire and patted the girl on her back. Come on, stop the tears, Donnie, it's just Billy, Wayla reminded with a grin, and Donnie sniffed for a moment, then blinked before a grin found its way to her face. Yeah, you're right, it is just Billy, isn't it? We've got like a dozen more in the back somewhere, don't we? Donnie said with a grin before falling back laughing while Whale blinked, and Blackfire slowly moved away from the clearly, or at least in her mind, insane ghost girl. Please tell me you know how to fix this. Naruto stated flatly, and Gizmo snorted while Donnie rolled on the floor, howling with laughter, and Whale watched on, a camera in hand recording it all. Seeing the others staring at her, Whale turned towards them and blinked for a moment. What? I'm saving this for posterity, she exclaimed with a grin before turning back to continue recording the laughing girl, as she started to pound on the floor. Turning back to Gizmo, they saw the tiny terror shake his head for a moment before breathing out a sigh. If I knew what was wrong with her, yeah, I could probably fix this, but like I said, her ectobiology is working on something new, or maybe this is just the equivalent to ectopuberty or something. Gizmo offered while Donnie suddenly started to groan before lunging back to the sink and threw up into it yet again. Then what's with her powers going nuts? Not to mention all the vomit. Naruto demanded of Gizmo, and the tiny terror muttered to himself before considering all he knew about Donnie, and then grimace. Oh, I think I know what that means. I mean, like I said, it's ectoplasmic residue. It's not so much vomit as it is a buildup of ectoplasm she hasn't been using and has started to degrade in her systems. She's producing more ectoplasm than her human or even her ghost form can hold, so her body is expelling the excess waste that's being created, hence all the throwing up. Gizmo explained while Dwayla continued to record everything, now recording the conversation. So then why is she building up so much ectoplasm then? Naruto demanded, and Blackfire turned to look where Donnie was now lying on the ground in a boneless heap. To hell if I know, Temp, all I can tell you is that some weird shit is going down with her biology. Gizmo stated before they all heard Donnie start to inhale her breaths radically. Oh no, not again. Hit the deck. Gizmo called out as Donnie sat up and sneezed out yet another jet of white flames, the sheer force of the sneeze, throwing her into the air and through a wall, as her intangibility seemed to kick in on instinct. Shit, someone go get her. Naruto grumbled out while rubbing his temples, and Mammoth nodded his head before heading out the door to find and retrieve the girl. Alright, I can see the build-up hurting her physically, thus the weakness in throwing up. But what about those mood swings, growth spurts, and all the sneezing? Naruto questioned of Gizmo, and the ball genius mulled that over in his head for a few moments before grimacing. Do you know what powers a ghost's abilities, Temp? Gizmo asked, and Naruto, and a vast majority of the team, shook their heads no. Emotions. The ghost is created when a sample of ectoplasm comes into contact with an extremely potent emotion. Thus a scored lover who felt jealousy and hate would create a ghost who only felt that way and looked the part of one. Thus the limited range of emotions for full ghosts. Donnie as a hybrid, however, constantly feels different emotions, supping up her ghost form, while also causing her to sporadically develop new powers based on those feelings. Gizmo said, mostly to himself, and Naruto frowned while glaring at the bald midget. Well, that does explain how she can be so powerful and yet still so young. That doesn't exactly tell me what I wanted to know. Naruto stated, and Gizmo blinked before grumbling under his breath for a moment. What I'm trying to say is that perhaps Donnie's body thinks it needs more power than it actually does, due to her being a hybrid, and therefore it is producing more power than needed, which is causing her emotions to come out in violent bursts. But her body can't handle all that power, and is creating a runoff in the form of ectoplasmic residue in her lungs and stomach she's constantly expelling. Gizmo explained, and Naruto frowned for a moment before Mammoth carried the ghost girl back into the room. Danny Fenton, he was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine, designed to view a world unseen. When it didn't quite work, his folks they just quit, but then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash, everything just changed, his molecules got rearranged. Donnie started to sing, more like rap, with a goofy grin on her increasingly pale features, and Naruto slapped his face, while the others just stared at the girl, before seeing Dwayla with the director's cap on. Yeah, keep going, Donnie. Work it, girl. The camera loves you, babe. The girl said while continuing to preserve this for posterity, as she had put it. Oh, and I thought I'd heard enough rapping from Karabi. The blonde muttered to himself, inwardly grumbling that Donnie was better at it than he and Karabi had been to himself. Now must get Donnie to the infirmary. And you installed the anti-ghost devices there already, right, Gizmo? Naruto questioned of the tiny terror, and Gizmo nodded his head with a frown. Yeah, I also put that shit in Donnie's room in my lab. I really didn't like the shit stain popping up everywhere. Gizmo grumbled out while walking over to Mammoth, the two making their way towards the infirmary with Naruto following them. Pouting as Donnie was taken away, Dwayla then saw the others head off as well, and let out an annoyed huff. Honestly, Donnie gets a little sick and everybody gets all worried. Dwayla says to herself before turning to look seemingly at no one. Yo, readers, nice to see you all again, anyone miss me? Dwayla questions of seemingly no one with a wave to the readers before grinning widely. Well, anyways, as you can probably guess, the author has been lazy again, but please don't blame him this time. He's really been overworked, not to mention he has other stories to write for, and you can't expect him to be able to continuously update this one story all the time. Will then says while crossing her arms behind her back and blinks when she hears a voice. Wah, yeah, right, I'm okay, Mr. Author Dude. Dwayla says while nodding her head to the unseen voices that seem to be speaking with her. Anyways, fans, I need to go and see what my buddies are doing, and continue to record Donnie's ultimate humiliation on tape for future generations. Will then says with a laugh while making her way to the infirmary with a wide and near psychotic grin on her face. Titan's Tower. Nightwing groaned as he slowly trudged out of his room and leaned heavily into the wall at his side. Palming his face for a moment, the former boy wonder mentally wished he was still a sidekick and didn't have to deal with, as far as he was concerned, his own version of the Joker in Red X. Wait, I bet Bruce would trade the Joker for X, and his mostly harmless pranks and insults in a heartbeat. Nightwing reminded himself since the Joker was leagues beyond Red X in terms of villainy. Especially after what he did to Jason. Nightwing added with a mental wince as he made his way down the long corridor, his sleep-addled mind willing him to the kitchen for coffee. First X and his crew trash the town with all manner of childish pranks, and then Dr. Light decides to keep us up all night. Why can't we seem to catch a break lately? The former boy wondered to himself as he made his way through the tower, thoughts of his fangirls briefly causing him to shiver. I face psychotic villains, robot commandos, ooze monsters, a demonic manifestation of fear, and even a pissed-off Red X, but fangirls are by far the scariest things in the universe. Knight thought to himself while remembering how they had tried to tear his clothes off to keep for some strange reason before Starfire had saved him from them. Wandering into the main ops of the tower, Nightwing ignored the others who were sitting on the sofa, Cyborg and Beast Boy, laughing their asses off. Man, I can't believe the look on his face. It almost makes up for them tagging the tower. Cyborg said to himself with Beast Boy, readily nodding his head in agreement with his titanium pal. Kid Flash however noticed Nightwing and grinned towards his friend. Morning Rich, sleep well? The redheaded boy questioned and Knight merely grunted for a moment. Need coffee? Knight mumbled while walking to the kitchen, and Donna shook her head for a moment. I think he's become dependent on that stuff. Donna noticed and Beast Boy snorted. You're dead, you have no idea. Beast Boy stated and then looked back to the screen which had a video of Blackfire kissing Nightwing, more importantly, the looks on his face before, during, and after she had done so. Play it again, Cyborg. Beast Boy ordered with a grin, and Cyborg rolled his eyes before rewinding the video feed, while Nightwing tiredly started on his coffee. Soon however the face of a grinning Gizmo came up on screen, his eyes closed slightly as he looked to the camera. Greetings peons and barf bags of the internet. Gizmo exclaimed, the Titans grunting at the insult toward everyone who heard it. I am Gizmo, technician of the new villainous group Tartarus. And I'd just like to say that if you're from Gotham, you'll really get a laugh out of this. Gizmo said with a grin, and Nightwing blinked before looking back to his coffee, deciding it wasn't worth looking into until he could think properly. As such he thankfully took his mug out and poured himself a bit of the drink, before looking to the screen with one arm on the counter. What you ask is so great that it'd lift the gloom and doom of Gotham, and get you to laugh when even Joker can't. Gizmo asked mockingly before waving his arms as he pointed to a screen with a scowling Nightwing on it. Why, the look on Nightwing's face when he's kissed by a hot alien supervillain, of course. The tiny terror exclaimed and Knight did a spit take, while Beast Boy laughed as he turned to see what had happened. Good morning my friends, is today not another most joyous day? Starfire asked as she floated into the room and Beast Boy shushed the alien princess. Do quiet down Star, it's about to get to the good part. Beast Boy stated with a grin, and Cyborg snickered even as Starfire tilted her head, as the screen showed a shaky scene, Nightwing tied up with a scowl on his face. I don't know what you're up to X, but you'll never get away with it. Knight growled out, and they heard what they could only guess was X yawning, while Starfire flew forward and leaned on the back of the sofa. Turn it off. The real Nightwing shouted while rushing forward, tripping over something before groaning on the floor. As he did that the video continued with the camera being turned to Blackfire, who was putting on some violet lipstick. Ready for your close-up, Suga? The heavily accented voice of Billy Numerous questioned and the Titans watched as Blackfire winked towards the cameraman. You know I've seen her before and she looks nearly identical to Starfire, but still why is she somehow hotter? Kid Flash asked the other male Titans, only for them to shrug, while Starfire blinked. Please, neither of us are on fire, though it is in our names, so how would she be hotter than I? Starfire questioned of her friends and Donna, who was already scowling, decided to answer for her. He's asking why Blackfire is more attractive than you Starfire. Donna stated flatly and Starfire blinked before frowning as well. Seriously, what are you guys up to? The confused Knight questioned on the screen as Billy turned back to him and the real Nightwing climbed up the back of the sofa and tried to grab the remote from Cyborg. Turn it off. Knight ordered and Cyborg held him at arm's length from the remote. No way man, this is payback for not telling us shit. Cyborg stated with a grin as Starfire raised a brow, only to see Blackfire come back onto the screen with a smirk. Oh, nothing bad, we're just having a little fun. Blackfire replied coyly, and Starfire scratched her head for a moment. Why is my sister wearing the purple lip makeup? She wondered aloud before watching as her sister grabbed Knight by his face and pulled him into a deep kiss. Star blinked before her frown returned and an annoyed look crossed her face. I see my sister may have changed, but that she is still my sister. She mumbled, meaning Blackfire wasn't trying to kill her, but was back to humiliating and teasing her for the fun of it on the screen. They watched as Blackfire soon released Knight from the kiss. His masked eyes wide and his mouth gaping, even as Red Axe took his belt from him, before giving a mock salute to the crowd, as the video cut off. Alright folks, now, who doesn't think the look on Nightwing's face was just priceless? Gizmo asked on screen while Nightwing growled under his breath and glared up at the screen heatedly. Anyways, I hope this has brightened your day a little, until we have more footage to humiliate Nightwing or the other Titans for years to come that will be immortalized on the internet. I bid you all farewell bitches. Gizmo exclaimed with a white shit-eating grin, as the video ended and Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Kid Flash started laughing at the angry look on Nightwing's face. They will pay for this, I swear they will pay and pay dearly. Night promised before giving Donna a look as she snickered, and Starfire grabbed the back of his suit and pulled him back to face her. Oh, you need something, Star? Nightwing asked nervously and saw the flat look on the normally cheery alien's face. Yes, why is that supposed to be funny? I do not see the humor of my sister doing the lip contact you humans call a kiss to you. Nor do I see why the look on your face was supposed to be humorous. Could you please explain it, friend Nightwing? Star asked, and Beast Boy and Cyborg both snickered while Nightwing mentally groaned, wishing that Raven hadn't locked herself in her room last night. Tartarus HQ, Infirmary. Most of Tartarus have moved to the infirmary. Seymour and Private are off to the side looking over some notes Gizmo had on what was happening to Donnie. Gizmo himself is working with Mammoth to strap Donnie down to an examination table, the girl's skin having turned an off-blue color, the skin around her eyes having darkened considerable, while her eyes had changed to a bright glowing red color. Will is whistling to herself while continuing to film the events with an amused look. Meanwhile, Naruto is watching on with a frown while standing to the side, drumming his fingers on his left bicep. While she's strapped down, Temp. Gizmo said as he and Mammoth backed away from the girl, as she looked more than a little out of it. Still no idea on how to fix this, Seymour? Naruto asked the one-eyed teen, and the Cyclops turned with a bewildered expression across his features. Unfortunately, well, I can roughly guess it has to do with her ghost side. I really don't know that much about ghost biology. Seymour admitted, and Naruto groaned before palming his face as Gizmo moved to his computer. Ugh, would someone please just kill me now? Donnie suddenly asked while reaching a hand up to her head, then looked down at her restraints with one eye. And why the fuck am I tied down? The girl demanded as she gritted her teeth in fury, Naruto raising a brow when he saw sharp fangs had replaced her canine teeth. Because we didn't want you flying away whenever you sneeze. Seymour offered from the side, and Donnie blinked, her eyes muting down to a more normal red before suddenly turning bright neon green. My head hurts. She mumbled to herself before falling back, then started to breathe lightly as she fell to sleep. Maybe we should get out of here. Mammoth offered, getting nods from Seymour and Private, as the three quickly ran out of the room, leaving Gizmo, Dwayla, and Naruto with the ghost girl. Pussies. Gizmo mumbled with a frown, while Jinx chose that moment to slide into the infirmary and grab Naruto by his shirt. Temp, what happened to Donnie? I went looking for her this morning after she sneezed and flew away, but I haven't been able to find her. She asked quickly, and Naruto pointed behind the rosette, Jinx breathing a sigh of relief when she saw the girl was sleeping, only to gape as she saw her features. What the hell is happening to her? She demanded loudly, thus waking the sleeping girl, who turned her bloody red eyes onto her sister figure. Shut the hell up, bitch. I'm trying to sleep. Donnie shouted before closing her eyes again, and Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. Boy, she's starting to sound like you guys. Naruto noted, and Gizmo shrugged his shoulders before going back to his work. Sighing softly, Naruto then grabbed Jinx's arm and pulled her out of the infirmary, then reached in and dragged Dwayla out to give Donnie some peace and quiet, while Giz worked on fixing this mess. Temp, what's wrong with her? Jinx asked with a strange look on her face, and Naruto shrugged even as he pulled the girls towards Ops. Not sure, Giz thinks it has to do with her ghostly biology. Naruto replied while Dwayla struggled with her leader's grip. Hey. Let me go, I wanna see if Donnie LL blow up or something else that's insanely amusing to watch. Dwayla shouted before growling as she reached up and started trying to gnaw on Naruto's wrist. Twitching, Naruto wondered if it was worth it to keep Dwayla from Donnie, and then remembered the sheer level of humiliation on Nightwing's head from their little video by 12 PM last night. They already had 10,000 hits on YouTube. In any case, what Dwayla could do would be worse, and Naruto would not allow his little Imato to be embarrassed that badly. Snickering at that thought of Nightwing's humiliation even as he dragged the girl behind him, Naruto then cleared his throat and looked to Jinx, ignoring Dwayla as she tried to reach his wrist. So, you had any lunch yet, Jinx? Naruto asked casually, and Jinx blinked before suddenly staring at the blonde-haired teen. No? She replied slowly, and Naruto nodded his head. Cool, then do you want to head out to get some pizza, seeing as more than likely someone has eaten the food I left out earlier? Naruto asked his pink-haired friend and saw her raise a brow while staring at him intently. What? Naruto asked at the look, and Jinx frowned before crossing her arms over her chest. It's just you haven't asked me personally to eat with you in a while or anything else really, unless it revolves around the team. Jinx replied while looking at the blonde, and he reached back and rubbed his neck with a nervous grin. Yeah, well, Kara-chan has issues with her birthday like I do, so I figure if she's anything like me, she doesn't want presents, she doesn't want a party, and she really doesn't want anyone bugging her right now. Naruto explained before grinning towards the rosette. Besides, I really don't spend enough time with any of you guys lately. Naruto then admitted, and Jinx raised a brow, but also decided not to look a gift horse in the mouth. However, Dwayla then flipped up and leaned heavily into their shoulders with a wide grin on her face. Lunch sounds great. Can I come? The redhead asked while looking to the two, and Naruto blinked before smirking. Sure, the more the merrier, right Jinx? Naruto offered and Jinx mentally huffed, physically pouted, and let out a sigh. You're right, temp absolutely fantastic. She mumbled out sarcastically as they made their way out of the base, Jinx absently turning on her holo watch, so she wouldn't attract any unwanted attention to them. Titan's Tower. Beast Boy was wandering through the tower. Actually, he was in one of the air vents over the main Titan's mainframe. The reason why is because he was technically banished from it. I swear, one virus in Cyborg's stupid recharger, and you're branded for life. Beast Boy thought to himself before turning and securing a rope to the top of the vent shaft. I have got to thank Kitten for showing me how to do this and ask her how she knows how to do it later. Beast Boy thought to himself while securing the rope to the harness worn over most his torso. I'm also going to have to ask why she had this weird setup. I mean, dude, it's like she's a part-time thief or international super spy or something. Beast Boy thought to himself before licking his lips as he undid the vent cover over the computer. Closing his eyes and taking a quick breath, he then looked out from the vent shaft and into the room of the mainframe. Looking for anyone, Beast Boy was pleased to see no one around, and thus pulled himself out of the shaft. Squeezing a trigger on his harness, Beast Boy was lowered towards the computer while humming the theme from Mission Impossible to himself. Oddly, the green teen was wearing an all-black outfit, complete with a black hat over his hair, and leaving only his face visible. Coming closer to the computer, Beast Boy stopped himself and turned the device on with the flick of a switch. Grinning as the device powered up, Beast Boy moved quickly and started to type rapidly on the keyboard of the computer. While it was true that he was in no way or form a genius, Beast Boy knew this after all. He was a fairly competent hacker, and as such, Beast Boy's mission was made all the more easy as he narrowed his eyes and entered into the off-limits area of the computer. Gotcha, he said to himself while hacking the password for the Titans Archive's personnel files. The files were individual files for each member of the Titans. There was one for Nightwing, one for Cyborg, one for Starfire, one for Raven, one for Beast Boy himself, one for Wonder Girl, one for Kid Flash, and even more for Titans East. The files had all of their personal information on the off chance they were severely injured in battle, or worse, murdered by an enemy. This way, any family or friends could be alerted to the situation, and a headstone could also have their name on it. Currently, however, Beast Boy had other reasons to hack into the files besides alerting someone or even making a headstone, though Raven would probably kill him if she found out he was digging around in her file. Bringing up Raven's file, Beast Boy then stuck his tongue out at the side of his mouth before looking over the information silently. Real name: Raven. Known aliases: Rachel Angela Roth, Pride. Gender: female. Height: 5'6". Weight: unknown. Family: Arella Roth, mother, Scath, father. Nationality: off-worlder, an alternate dimension known as Azarath. Forward team: none. Powers: empathic abilities, natural healing ability, flight, soul self, and some form of magic telekinetic powers. Titan status: active member. Birth date: September 9, 1009, on Azarian calendar. Upon reading that, Beast Boy stopped at the mention of her birthday, and his eyes suddenly widened before a wide grin stretched across his face. Dude, jackpot, he said while almost swearing a cash register sounded somewhere. He then read over the entry with great interest before he suddenly did a double take and widened his eyes when he saw what the real date for Raven's birthday would be on a normal calendar. It's Raven's birthday today. Sweet, he exclaimed loudly before covering his mouth and looking around to make sure no one had heard him. Sure that no one knew where he was, Beast Boy quickly turned the computer off before turning around in midair. Grabbing the rope holding him up, he then climbed his way back up before replacing the grate over the vent he'd used to get into the mainframe. Grinning, the green jester then turned and made his way back to his room, a plan already forming in his mind. Dude, this is going to be so sweet, he thought to himself while journeying into the depths of the vents around the tower. Rose Wilson, aka the Ravager, walked back into her base after her nice long vacation with a sigh. It's so nice to be home, she said to herself while sipping an ice-cold soda and walked further into her lair, only to stop and narrow her sole remaining eye when she noticed the destroyed remains of several of her security droid. Frowning, she walked further in, over to a wall, and grabbed both of her swords, before unsheathing them with narrowed eye. Walking forward with the swords at her side, Rose widened her eyes slightly upon seeing scorch marks on several of the robots. Did Raven turn into a demon and attack my base? No, there'd be nothing left if that were the case, Rose reminded herself while journeying deeper into the base, noticing the signs of destruction were becoming increasingly more devastating the further within she went. Oddly, however, the gears and cogs that made up the machinery of her lair were all twisting and turning, endlessly churning and creeping her out slightly. That was one of her father's old tactics after all. Leaving the cogs and gears on was a way of expressing the passage of time. Alright, whoever the hell you are, come out now and I'll consider leaving you with your head still attached, Rose shouted and then looked around for whomever had dared to enter her base while she was on vacation. Honestly, the nerve of some people. I can't even go relax at a nice spa for a week or two without something attacking my home. Rose thought to herself while moving one step at a time, and then saw the screens to her monitors were all glowing. The chair before them was turned to them, and she could see the edge of someone's head sitting within the chair growling low in her throat. Rose approached the chair, and it turned towards her. Someone sat within the chair, silhouetted in shadow and leaving only a single eye glaring down towards her. Who the hell are you and what are you doing in my home? Rose demanded of the intruder and watched as he stood to his full, impressive height, then folded his arms behind his back. Now dear. The familiar cold, calculating voice of a ghost echoed, and Rose's soul eyes suddenly widened. No, it can't be you, you're dead. You can't be here. Rose said while the shadow raised a brow and then stalked towards her. The girl then began to shake while taking several steps back, and a man walked forward, snapped a finger, and numerous lights suddenly started to come on. Soon a familiar figure was revealed and Rose dropped her swords, eye wide and her entire body shaking in pure fear as Slade stood before her, looking down at her impassively. Is that any way to talk to your dear old father? Slade questioned darkly, and Rose whimpered slightly as that man suddenly lashed out, grabbing her by her throat and lifting her off the floor with one arm. Grasping the man's wrist, Rose held on for dear life as Slade chuckled lightly in his throat. It looks like you've forgotten your place since I've been away. A mistake I'll have to rectify. Slade mused while tossing Rose to the side effortlessly, and the girl watched as he then turned towards the monitors, his back turned to her. Father? Rose started to ask while Slade turned his head to look down at her impassively. Is that really you? She asked in a whisper, and Slade chuckled lightly while turning around to face her. Can't you tell? Slade asked dangerously, and Rose bit her lip before slowly standing to face the man. My father always said never to trust only my eyes. Only what I know for a fact is what I should believe. Rose stated, and Slade looked at her for a moment before his eyes softened ever so slightly. But girl, it looks like you haven't forgotten your training after all. Slade mused and then cupped his chin for a moment, leaving himself deep in thought. How are you? Rose started to question only for Slade to raise a hand, and then turned to look at her dangerously. There will be time for questions later, Rose, for now, we have a job to do. Slade stated and then turned and walked over to the monitors before watching several of them. Go get ready, I'll be waiting for you. Slade ordered, and Rose quickly grabbed her swords and ran towards her room, leaving Slade to narrow his eye on several screens showing the Titans in Tartarus. Titan's Tower. So wait, Ray's birthday is today, and she didn't even tell us. Cyborg questioned while scratching his head with a frown. He was with the others in ops. Currently an ecstatic Beast Boy was telling them all the news he'd found in the Titan's mainframe, namely, that it was Raven's birthday. I know, right? You think that even a chick like Raven would be happy about her big day. Especially since it's her 18th B-day at that. Beast Boy said excitedly, and Donna frowned while crossing her arms. Although, doesn't anyone think it was weird that Raven just scared Dr. Light to death last night, then instantly came back to the tower, while leaving us to deal with him? Kid Flash asked while looking to the other Titans, and Nightwing frowned deeply. He knew Raven very well. The only person he knew of that knew her better was Naruto, and that was saying something. Well, maybe she just doesn't like her birthday for one reason or another. Night mused aloud while Donna nodded her head in agreement with the teen. Maybe she has a reason not to tell any of us about her birthday. Donna replied, and Beast Boy mocked her for a moment before crossing his arms. When does Raven need an excuse to act weird? Beast Boy questioned and got looks from the others for the weird comment before ignoring the green jester once more. Either way, it is Raven's birthday and I for one am glad she's around. Night then said, and the others grinned in agreement. However, I'm still going to have to punish you for disobeying me and heading into the restricted files in the archives, Beast Boy. Night then added with a frown, and Beast Boy gaped at him for a moment before groaning light. Sighing, the green jester then grinned while rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I know that, but come on dude. To think that today of all days is Raven's birthday is just so wild, don't you think? I mean, sure, Raven can be creepy and temperamental at times, but without her all our butts would have been toast a ton of times. Beast Boy said with a nod of his head, and Cyborg grinned as he ducked to the side and started to dig around for something. Yeah, and I know just the thing to make this day extra special for her. Cyborg exclaimed before holding up what appeared to be a pinata shaped like Beast Boy, a pinata shaped like Beast Boy. He exclaimed, and Kid Flash and Donna grinned while cracking their knuckles, the original gaping at what his friend has either bought or created. Dude, that's like so mean, Cyborg. Why would you make something that looks like me if you're just going to hit it with a stick? Beast Boy demanded with his arms crossed over his chest, and Cyborg blinked for only a moment before smiling widely. What? I think it's a nice way to let our frustrations out on something, especially seeing as you're the one who always frustrates us. And I know Raven would love to smack you around, even if this thing only looks like you. Cyborg replied while pointing at Beast Boy accusingly, and the green changeling glared at his friend heatedly. However, Starfire then flew between the two and ducked into the refrigerator, before throwing out pounds upon pounds of meat. Blinking for a moment, the Titans watched this spectacle before pushing Nightwing over to find out what was going on. turning to glare at his team for only a second. Knight then sighed as he turned back to where Starfire was. Starfire, what are you doing? Nightwing asked while looking at the alien, and she grinned widely while kicking the door to the fridge closed and turning around to face him. I am making the traditional Tamaranian Thruckner, the crown of meat for friend Raven's day of birth. Starfire supplied, and all of the Titans stared at the girl, while Nightwing coughed into one hand, as the red-haired alien then began to work her hands into the meat, attempting to make it into a crown. Oh okay. Knight then said while turning around and rubbed his chin for a moment. Alright, Kid Flash, I want you and Donna to put up the decorations, there should be some down in the basement. Knight ordered, and both Kid Flash and Donna saluted before going off to find the decorations. Cyborg, you work on Raven's cake. Knight ordered, and the titanium teen grinned while rubbing his chin for a moment. Alright. I'll make my famous 8-layer cake, he said while lunging into the kitchen and grabbed an apron and chef's hat before getting to work. Blinking and shaking his head at this, Knight then slapped his face with a light groan. Right. He mumbled before turning around to Beast Boy, who eagerly awaited his orders. Beast Boy, you have to figure out a way to keep Raven busy for however long it'll take us to get all this ready, or just leave her alone until we need her. Knight started to order, only to stop as he remembered how Raven was never mind that first thing, instead figure out a way to lure her into ops when we're ready for her. Knight ordered, and Beast Boy clicked his heels together and saluted. Aye, Captain, he said before grinning and lunged off with a snicker, Nightwing shaking his head as he did so. However, the green changeling didn't stay gone as he then slid back into ops and ran over to Knight. Whoa. Dude, we almost forgot to get Nar down here for her big day, Beast Boy said, and Nightwing frowned and nodded his head slowly. Good point, Starfire, Knight admitted, and then turned around to the said alien, who was now beaming towards a crown made entirely of meat. Blinking when she heard her name, the Tamaranian turned towards the leader of the Titans, and tilted her head to one side in confusion. Yes, what do you need, friend Nightwing? She asked, and Nightwing inwardly wondered why Starfire had to look so cute when she was confused, shaking that thought off the former boy wonder, then crossed his arms over his chest. Do you know Naruto's number? He asked, and Starfire frowned as she put the crown of meat down, and drummed her fingers on the kitchen counter. Yes, at least I think I do. I once saw Raven dial the number, and it allowed her to be speaking to him. Starfire admitted, and Nightwing sighed to himself for a moment before smiling at Star patiently. Do you remember that number? He asked, and Starfire nodded her head. Then can you please call Naruto and tell him we're planning a party for Raven? Knight asked, and Starfire frowned before nodding her head with a bright smile. Thanks, Star. Knight then said, and Starfire flew over to a phone while Beast Boy rushed back down the hall to get his own plan for luring Raven into ops started. Jump City. Naruto sits with Jinx and Dwayla in the park, each eating some pizza they had gotten earlier, the blonde shaking his head as Dwayla sighs happily while munching on her pizza. Surprisingly, she wasn't dressed like a clown, or even a villain for the moment, having decided on wearing a more normal choice of dress for the time being. That being said, Naruto couldn't help but stare at the girl intently, even as he slowly munched on his pizza. Why? Because without all the stuff that made her look like a clown or some other villain's daughter, she had dark crimson hair, and a pair of dark amethyst eyes, just like his mother had when she was that age. Stare too long temp and people might start to get ideas, Jinx suddenly stated with a frown on her face, and Naruto blinked before grinning nervously. Sorry, just never thought that Dwayla looked so much like mom without all the chemicals and such she uses to look like a clown 24/7. Naruto admitted, and unfortunately perked Dwayla's interest. Really? Do you have a picture of her? Maybe we're long-lost siblings, Dwayla asked, then exclaimed, and Naruto frowned before reaching into his wallet and pulled out two before handing them over to the clown girl. Looking at Kushina, Dwayla narrowed her eyes before raising a brow when she saw that Naruto was indeed correct. If she was a little older, she might even be a dead ringer for the deceased woman. Weird, but why are her eyes yellow gold in this picture, but dark violet in this one? Dwayla asked, Jinx snatching the pictures from her only to see that the clown girl was correct. Oh that, well my mom technically died on the day I was first born, Naruto admitted while taking a bite of his pizzin, and Jinx gaped at the blonde for a moment. But in this picture she's holding you when you're like 4. The Rosette exclaimed, and Naruto nodded his head silently for a moment before holding up a finger as he swallowed his bite of pizza. Yeah. Well, according to mom, a traveling medic was in the village at the time and learned of my condition in the village. Feeling that I would need a mother's love when I was growing up, he sacrificed his own life and used some of the chakra from within me to revive her. Unfortunately, the medic died himself, and from what mom told me, her eyes were that bright amber gold color from that day onwards. She never figured out why either, only that they were that color, and it wasn't a Kekkei Genkai like the Sharingan or Byakugan. Naruto explained before taking another bite of his piece at Dwayla, making an O with her mouth. Oh, so she was raised from the dead and her eyes changed. Dwayla noted with a nod of her head and shrugged her shoulders with a bored look. Not like I haven't seen that or weirder before, she noted, and Jinx grudgingly nodded her head, Naruto wondering what that was supposed to mean before deciding it didn't matter. Yeah, after all I was once reanimated with a Lazarus pit by my dad, Raz Al Ghul. The insane girl then said with a wide grin, and Jinx slapped her face and Naruto snickered. Soon noticing neither teen believed her, Twila pouted before going back to her pizza and eating it with her two friends. Eating in silence for a moment, Naruto then took his pictures back and put them into his wallet, while Jinx leaned back in her seat. Frowning for a moment she then stared at Naruto, and he gave her a look. You know Temp, I've been wondering something for a while now. The girl started to say, Naruto raising a brow as she did. Oh really? The blonde teen questioned and Jinx nodded her head silently for a few moments. Yeah, you're supposed to be a super powerful ninja warrior, and even a sage of some kind at your world, right? She asked and Naruto nodded his head, an amused smirk across his face, as he wondered how people in his world would react to him being called that. Then how come Batman captured you? You keep getting tired, and overall, it's almost like you're weaker than you should be. Jinx asked and Naruto mentally sighed for a moment. He'd actually been wondering when someone would ask him about this. Do you know why Superman holds back? Naruto asked and saw the wide-eyed look that flew across Jinx's features at his serious expression. So he won't kill people because he has enough strength to break the planet into pieces if he's not careful. She said with a visible shiver and Naruto nodded his head with a slight frown on his face. Correct. And I do the same thing though admittedly to a lesser extent. If I use my full strength I could easily break bones with single punches, and I really don't want to kill people, so I overcompensate for it. That's why I seem so much weaker than I probably should. The people are much too frail for me to go all out on. Hell, even Starfire and Blackfire are too frail for me to use my full power. Against Donnie on the other hand, seems to be the closest to being able to take me on at full strength without being turned into jelly, which is why I'm training her. Naruto explained then admitted and Wayla whistled, while Jinx plainly stared at the boy. So do you think you could fight Superman one-on-one then? Wayla asked and got a look as if he thought she were crazy, one which she got many times in response. Hell no. That guy is ridiculously powerful. You'd have to be completely out of your mind to want to fight someone who can literally tear planets apart with his bare hands. I mean yeah, I'm tough, but I couldn't fight that guy and come out without being severely injured. Naruto said to the girl loudly, and Jinx breathed a sigh of relief before looking at the blonde for a moment. So how much do you hold back in fights? Jinx questioned casually and Naruto frowned for a moment. I only use about 10 to 15% of my full power whenever I fight people like Batman or the Titans. I use 50 against those fucking plants, and for the shinobi flunkies, I use about well, somewhere around 60 to 70%. Although with Batman he cheated cause he used that tranquilizer shit, and it knocked me out before I could actually try to beat him. Naruto explained then grumbled out at the end as Jinx escaped towards him, while he took another bite of his pizza and munched on it. Wow, so what about that sage mode thing? Jinx asked and Naruto rolled his eyes for a moment before giving her a look. That is a trade secret, doll. He responded with a smirk, and Jinx pouted lightly before all three returned to the pizza. All was silent for a few moments, before Jinx finished her pizza and swallowed it with a sigh. Looking over to Naruto, the girl then stretched her arms and wrapped them behind her neck to lean back. So Temp, you don't really talk to any of us about yourself that much, how come? Jinx noted while looking at her blonde-haired leader and Naruto shrugged his shoulders and crossed his legs. Yeah well I've never really thought it'd be a good idea to do so before. If not because of factions of villains I know would try to use it against me, then because the majority of our team can't keep a secret to save their lives. Naruto noted before looking to Dwayla, Jinx mentally agreeing while the out-of-disguise clown girl munched happily on her pizza, while humming a strange little tune to herself. Isn't that the same tune from Fooly Cooly? Jinx asked the insane girl flatly, and Dwayla grinned widely. Yep. I just love Haruko. She rocks. Dwayla exclaimed before staring at Naruto intently for a few moments. What? Naruto asked and Dwayla grinned. Haruko and Naruto, your names sound similar. Dwayla stated, and Naruto gave the girl a flat look as Jinx snickered to herself. Yeah. Naruto said flatly while Dwayla then reached back and pulled the bass guitar she pilfered from somewhere honestly. How does she do that? Naruto wondered while scratching his head, and Jinx let out a soft sigh. How does Harley Quinn do that with her mallet? She questioned in retort, and Naruto blinked before conceding to Rosette's point. Oh that's easy. Hammer space. Dwayla exclaimed with the raised arm holding up the blue bass into the air. Hammer space. Naruto questioned of Jinx, and the girl reached up to pinch the bridge of her nose. It's supposed to be the empty pocket dimension behind a cartoon character's back where they pull all their stuff from. Jinx explained with a frown before glaring at Dwayla as she started to strum on the strings of the bass. And by the way Dwayla, hammer space doesn't exist in the real world. Jinx stated and Dwayla raised a brow before giving the Rosette a flat look in response. Oh really? She asked and then stood up, walked to the side and turned all around. Nothing behind my back. She said and slipped the guitar behind her back before turning once more, the guitar having vanished. Presto. She exclaimed with a grin, and Naruto looked more than a little surprised, while Jinx gaped. How in the high hell did you do that? she demanded, and Will reached up and made a zipping motion over her lips, turned her hand as if locking something, and threw her hand back as if throwing a key away. Thanks for lending me that trick with hammer space, Mr. Author dude. I've always wanted to do that. Will thought towards the author of a supposedly fictional story she was a part of. As he ate his pizza, Naruto watched an annoyed Jinx frisk Wayla, idly enjoying the show. He then blinked as his communicator started to beep. Reaching into his pants, he pulled out the yellow device, while Jinx was checking behind Wayla for some sort of short-range teleportation device or something similar. It's a good thing we're pretty far in the park, or we might get arrested for this, huh? Naruto thought and snickered at the idea of getting arrested for this, rather than the dozen other things they'd done. Yo. Naruto said while activating the communicator, and heard an annoyed Gizmo reply. Hey Temp, you got a call coming in from Titan's tower on the line. Want me to patch it through to your communicator? The tiny Terra questioned, and Naruto raised a brow, wondering why Raven would call him today of all days. Sure, Giz. Naruto finally said while looking back to Jinx and Wayla, where the Rosette was now actually removing a sizable portion of Dwayla's clothes to figure out what she did with the bass guitar up, and with Dwayla looking so much like my mom today, that is so not the image I needed in my head. The blonde thought to himself with a grimace while rubbing his face, and then finally heard the link up on the communicator go through. Hello? Naruto asked while leaning into the receiver, and blinked when he didn't hear Raven answer. Oh? I was right, this was the right number. Thank you for answering, friend. Raven's friend who is a boy. Starfire answered, and Naruto blinked for a moment before placing an arm onto the back of his seat. Okay, since when does Starfire call me? The blonde had to wonder before voicing his confusion and ignoring whatever Jinx and Wayla were doing, which was probably for the best at this point. Starfire, why are you calling me? Naruto asked the girl with a frown, and the alien princess chuckled nervously. Please forgive me, I know that we are not, as you would say, close, but I was hoping that you may wish to come to a surprise day of birth party we are planning for friend Raven. Starfire replied, and Naruto grimaced slightly. He knew of Raven's problem with her birthday after all. I'm really not so sure that a birthday party is such a good idea, Starfire. Naruto told the alien princess with a worried look across his face, and Starfire blinked on her end of the line. Why is that? She asked the blonde-haired teen in confusion, and Naruto scratched his head for a moment. Let's just say she really doesn't like her birthday and leave it at that. Naruto replied with a frown, seeing as he hated his birthday even more than Raven did, and that was actually saying something. Though in his defense, his mother died, twice if he was specific, on that day, and it only held bad memories for him. That may be, but we are very glad that we have friend Raven around and wish to celebrate the day of her birth. Starfire replied happily, and Naruto blinked before frowning as he rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, I'm glad she's alive too, Starfire, but she really doesn't like her birthday. The best thing you could do is to let her be, and not bother her today. Naruto told the alien girl while looking over to see Jinx was sitting down again, an amused Wayla fixing her clothes as his pale friend's cheeks looked noticeably redder than normal. I don't want to know, I really don't want to know. The blonde thought to himself with a grimace, mentally willing any perverted images to burn away. But please Naruto, we wish for friend Raven's friend who is a boy to come to see her on her day of birth at her party of surprise. Starfire pleaded, and Naruto sighed while reaching up to rub his face for a few moments. Drumming his finger onto his bicep for a moment, Naruto considered going with this idea, especially seeing as he was more than happy that Raven was alive. Alright, I'll come. But don't blame me when she gets pissed off cause you guys decided to throw her a surprise party. And when she does, which she will, I will blame you guys. Naruto finally conceded, then stated with a frown, and Starfire squealed with joy. Bringing the communicator away from his ear, Naruto cleared it with a finger and sighed before bringing it back to his ear. Oh, thank you very, very much, Naruto. I am most certain that if nothing else, friend Raven would be most mirthful to see you on her day of birth. Starfire said happily, and the blonde wondered why he had a bad feeling about this. Yeah, so when should I come around for the party? Naruto asked the red-haired girl, and Starfire blinked on her end. Nearby, Jinx looked more than a little put off by that, while Wayla was amusing herself by staring at the clouds. Friend Nightwing, when should Naruto come to the party of surprise? Starfire asked her friend on the other end of the line, and Naruto shook his head as he awaited her answer. Friend Nightwing says that we should be ready by 6 o'clock in the PM. Starfire replied, and Naruto silently looked at a clock on the communicator, and hummed to himself for a moment. Alright Star, I'll swing by around that time, but I feel I must reiterate in saying this is a bad idea. Naruto said to the girl with a slow shake of his head, and Starfire thanked him before hanging up the phone. Sighing, Naruto closed his communicator and stuck it back into his pocket before rubbing his face, and looked at Jinx and Wayla, the Rosette looking at him flatly. So what next, Temp? She questioned while trying not to sound bitter, and Naruto wondered why she sounded so annoyed. Well, the Titans want me to come to a surprise party for Raven's birthday tonight, which will end badly, I'm sure. So until then we can do whatever. Naruto replied, and Jinx thought for a moment before she wondered something to herself. Speaking of birthdays, when's yours, Temp? Jinx asked, and Naruto gave her a look before sighing to himself. I'll be 19 on October 10th. He admitted with a frown, and Jinx stared at him for a few moments. What? The blonde questioned of the pink-haired girl, and Jinx shook her head for a moment. Izumo told me you were 17. She admitted with a raised brow, and Naruto smirked despite himself. Yeah, well, since I've never celebrated my birthday before, Gizmo probably just guessed I was that old, and I just didn't care to correct him, seeing as I really don't care about my birthday. Naruto explained, and Willa cocked her head to one side as she looked out at nothing. Why do you not celebrate your own birthday? I mean, cake and presents with you as the star of the show, that sounds like something you'd enjoy. She wondered while ticking off fingers at the list, and Jinx scowled deeply while turning to the redhead. In case you've forgotten, Willa, he said his mother died on his birthday, twice. Jinx growled out, and Willa made an O with her mouth, while Jinx let out a breath. Seriously though, Temp, how did you not go insane from that? Jinx asked, and Naruto scratched one cheek with a slight look. Temp? Jinx asked with narrowed eyes on the blonde, and Willa looked on with interest. Well, let's just say you really don't want to know and leave it at that. Naruto then said, and Jinx decided it would be best to let it go. If he wanted to tell her, he eventually would. Afterwards, the three sat in a comfortable silence, only for Willa to hop up and lean over Jinx with a grin. Let's go see a movie, she exclaimed, and Naruto raised a brow. Got one in mind? The blonde asked, and Willa nodded her head. Let's go see a comedy, she stated, and Naruto blinked while Jinx blinked before glaring at the redhead angrily. Hell no, Jinx shouted, Willa pouting and glaring at her when she did. The girls then got into an argument about the movie, with Naruto mentally groaning and closing his eyes, willing himself to fall asleep, as Jinx argued with their crazy friend. Later, Raven sits in her room, the door is locked, her blinds close, and the only light is from a bedside lamp. The violet-haired girl was sitting cross-legged on her bed, a frown on her face as she glared down at a clock before her. The old wind-up alarm clock slowly ticks around, soon landing on 6 o'clock, the girl sighing as it does so. 6 p.m. Just 6 more hours and it'll be over. 6 more. Raven said to herself while falling back on her bed, bringing the clock with her, only for the sound of someone knocking on her door to interrupt her thoughts. The knocking briefly startles the girl, causing her to quickly stand up and look around. Hello. Raven questions of the door, however no one answers, and she then put her clock down before tiredly walking over to the door. Opening the door halfway to peek out into the hall, Raven worriedly notes nothing is out there. Slowly, she opened the door all the wall, and made her way around the hall. There has to be a rational explanation for this, I hope. Raven thought to herself as she slowly approached the center of the tower. However, the tower is dark, everything is quiet, something that was unusually with her home, and even worse, all was still everywhere around her. I've got a bad feeling about this. Raven thought to herself while the door to op slowly opened to reveal a completely dark room. As she does, the lights blaze on, a happy birthday banner visible in the background, and all of the titans jump up. Surprise. They all cheer at once, Raven shrieking before fading out of existence, Naruto sighing for a moment while shaking his head. Raven. Cyber gasped while looking around for the pale girl. It is merely us, your friends, with warm wishes for the day of your birth. Starfire added while looking around for the girl, Nightwing pinching the bridge of his nose, while Naruto grunted from the side. I told you all this was a bad idea. The blonde said from the side where he was leaning into the counter of the Titan's kitchen. Dude, we didn't think you were serious. Beast Boy admitted even as a familiar black portal opened behind him, Raven rising up with a scowl on her face. Oh really? She asked flatly, Beast Boy yelping before ducking behind Cyborg as she crossed her arms. And just how did you know it was my birthday? Raven demanded before giving an accusing glance to Naruto, who held up his hands. Hey, don't look at me, Kar-chan, this was all their idea, and like I told them earlier, I blame them. Naruto stated, and Raven heard no lies, thus turned to glare at her teammates, Beast Boy grinning nervously as he stuck his head out from behind Cyborg. Remember last night how you made that big deal about tomorrow? Well, we started wondering what tomorrow was, so we did some snooping. Beast Boy started to explain, only to get scathing glares from the other titans. Grinning nervously once more, the teen rubbed the back of his neck before continuing. Okay, I did some snooping. He then admitted, and Raven continued to stare at him ominously. And I sorta found a restricted file in the off-limits area of the Titan's computer that kinda had your birthday on it. Beast Boy finished with a nervous chuckle, and Starfire popped up in front of Raven with a wide smile on her face. And we have been preparing your celebration ever since. The Tamaranian called out cheerfully, while Beast Boy slid over to stand next to his pale teammate. We put up tons of decorations, Beast Boy said while waving around the room, and Raven's left eye visibly twitched. Cyborg then popped up at the side, wearing a chef's hat and holding a covered dish in hand. I baked my famous 8-layer cake with 3 kinds of frosting, the titanium teen says while unveiling the cake to all, 18 candles placed onto the top of it, with the thing being nearly half the size of a person, with a multitude of different frostings as he held it up. Naruto looked at the death by sugar, as far as he was concerned, with an annoyed glare, and Starfire slid up next to her friend. "And I have assembled for you a traditional Tamaranian Thruckner," Starfire exclaimed while holding up something that vaguely looked like a crown resting on a pillow. "The crown of meat." Starfire finished with a wide smile, and Raven twitched even as Kid Flash sipped over with one arm on her shoulder. "Yeah, not to mention we even called you boyfriend over to make the day extra special for you." Kid Flash finished with a smirk, Raven narrowing her eyes before moving his arm off her shoulder as Nightwing and Donna looked to her worriedly. "I hope this is okay. We just..." Night started to say uncertainly, only for Raven to interrupt him. "No, it's not," Raven stated icily while glaring at him and Donna, the Amazon, wondering why she could make hardened warriors shake with a look. "Look, I really appreciate what you're trying to do here," Raven started to say while looking to the others, and then settled on Night while crossing her arms. "But I'm not interested," she started before making her way towards the door, only for Starfire to get in her way. "But there will be music and the ice cream, and a strange game involving pins and the behind of a donkey," Star said while trying to convince her friend to give the party a chance, and Raven twitched once more. However, Cyborg then came from the side with a grin and something put behind his back. "Akmonre, we got a pinata shaped like Beast Boy," Cyborg said while dangling the item before Raven, who blinked. "You know you want to smack it," he said, and for a brief moment, she actually considered allowing the party, if for nothing else then, so she could smash that thing into a million pieces, and not feel bad about it. The almost evil look from Naruto onto the pinata seemed to say he agreed, as did Donna and Kid Flash's looks. However, she then shook her head and crossed her arms over her chest. "I said no," Raven said with conviction, Naruto pouting as he realized his chance to beat the pinata was taken from him. However, the real Beast Boy then sidled up next to Raven with a grin on his face. "Come on, Raven. I know you hate fun, but it's your birthday. It's special," Beast Boy tried to say, and Raven felt her shoulders tense while she grit her teeth slightly. "You can't let this day end without." Beast Boy started to finish only for Raven to whirl around on him, her eyes glowing a fierce blood red. "No," she shouted loudly, her powers flaring as the decorations, balloons, banner, and refreshments either melting or exploding as she did so. Naruto, however, casually held up a hand, catching a bowl of potato chips as they flew into the air, and smirked to himself. "Nice, I was getting kinda hungry," he noted quietly before taking one or two out and munching on them as he walked over to Raven. Taking hold of her arm, he then looked to a wide-eyed Nightwing. "Yo, Bird Brain, do you mind if I take Kara-chan out with me to clear her head?" Naruto questioned, and Nightwing blinked before shaking his head slowly, the blonde teen shouldering past the others to lead Raven out the door. "I told you a surprise party was a bad idea," Beast Boy finally says as Naruto and Raven walk out of earshot, only to get whacked on the back of his head by Cyborg. "Shut up," he started flatly and then sighed as he went to start the cleanup. Meanwhile, down the hall, Raven is giving Naruto a look as he leads he towards the elevator of the tower. "I want to be," Raven started to say, only for Naruto to put a chip in her mouth with a smirk across his face. "Alone? Yeah, well, I know, but I think you can do with some fresh air than you can with being alone," Naruto stated, and Raven gave him a look, even as she absently munched on the chip in her mouth, and then swallowed. "Have something in mind?" she asked flatly, and Naruto rubbed his chin for a moment before smirking lightly. "How about a walk in the park?" Naruto offered the girl, and then saw Raven's annoyed look. "Or better yet, we could head out to the forest outside of Jump and enjoy the unspoiled splendors and solitude of nature." Naruto then mused aloud with a smirk, and Raven blinked before crossing her arms. "Fine," she grumbled, only to blush when Naruto placed a hand onto her hip and pulled her into his side. "Is this really necessary?" she asked him flatly, and Naruto took a mock thoughtful look for a moment before nodding his head. "Then why are you bringing those chips?" Raven then asked him, and a smirk crossed his face. "Because I'm hungry, of course," Naruto replied with a sly smirk across his face, Raven raising a brow before rolling her eyes. Leaning into Naruto's side as they walked out of the tower, Raven decided this wasn't such a bad way to spend her least favorite day of the year. Slade leaned back as he finished the last reel of footage of the Titans and Tartarus. The Titans' tactics had remained almost the same, though the addition of Kid Flash and Wonder Girl would be a problem to deal with, well, at least if he were still normal. Though he paid more attention to the newly renamed Nightwing on the Titans team for obvious reasons. It's about time he got a better name, and his skills have improved as well. The man thought to himself for a moment before his eyes wandered over to the hull of Tartarus and its rather large crew. Tartarus, unlike the Titans, were more a mercenary group, something he himself was once a part of. Though clearly they hadn't managed to get their name out into the world in order for jobs to come in yet. Perhaps I could help with that, Slade noted to himself before taking a look at the individual members of Tartarus, starting off with Donnie Phantom aka. She was going to be more of a problem than he liked to admit. She had power over fire, had super strength, speed and agility, could fly, her body could become intangible or even transparent, some moderately high transformation abilities, high endurance, a natural ability to shape objects out of her energy, and of course a heightened heal factor. Annoyingly powerful and only getting stronger with age, though her inexperience will be her downfall. Slade noted before turning to look at Blackfire and mentally frowned. This girl was almost identical to Starfire in her skills, however her powers were more refined and thereby more potent. Added to this was her experience in combat, making her by far a more deadly opponent than her little sister. This one merits further study. Slade noted to himself before looking over most of the rest of Tartarus, most of which he had already been aware of, thanks to files from the Hive, such as Mammoth, Gizmo, Jinx, Seymour, Private Hive, Billy Numerous, and even Kid Wicked. Wait a minute, I know her. Slade suddenly thought while his eye twitched as he saw Dwayla on the screen. Ugh, why in God's name did she have to be on that team? Of all people it had to be her. The man inwardly grumbled as his eye twitched, memories of a brief encounter with Dwayla echoing in the back of his mind. Getting back to it, Slade inwardly remembered that Dwayla had a plethora of gadgets and weapons from a portion of Gotham's villains. All in all, the man thought he'd need to get seriously drunk if he ever actually tried to fight against Dwayla again, especially since the girl was just that wacky and insane. Then, Slade came to the most interesting member of Tartarus, Red X, aka Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. Someone who knows how to push Nightwing's buttons better than me. Slade noted to himself while lightly drumming his fingers on the armrest of his chair. Red X was an odd one. He clearly had the power to kill off every Titan, yet chose not to, and instead dated his enemy Raven. He also had no real interest in villainy, and seemed only to attack the Titans for the sake of humiliating them, though especially liked to do so to Nightwing. X also tended to use the features of his suit over his natural abilities, though admittedly he would most likely kill anyone he hit with even the weakest of his natural attacks, a living contradiction. That one though, I do have a message for him as well as dear Raven. Slade mused to himself as he then laced his fingers together while gazing at his screens intently. Such an interesting enemy the Titans have now. Slade mused to himself while leaning into his right fist with a dark look in his cold slate gray eye. Father. Rose's voice came from behind him, and Slade swiveled his chair around, fingers laced together as he gazed at the girl coldly. He only idly noticed she'd switched the blue mask she used to wear for one oddly similar to the one he wore, which was strange, and that she seemed nearly terrified of him, though that wasn't so strange. When should we begin? Rose questioned quietly, and Slade closed his eyes, and then took a thoughtful expression as he sat back. A few mere seconds later, a bright red S-shaped symbol formed on his brow, only to vanish as his eyes opened. We attack now to lure out the Titans. I've learned all I needed to know about our enemies and their new abilities and allies since I've been away. Slade replied coldly while getting out of his chair and walked past Rose. Come dear, we have work to do. Slade then stated as he made his way out of the base. Blinking for only a moment, Rose then followed after her father warily, wondering what forces had brought the man back from the grave. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.